Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Tastemakers. This is, of course, the podcast where we taste what's going on in the world of television and film. And this month, things are tasting a little scary. But there's other stuff going on as well. I'm your host, Taran Armstrong, and we're going to let you know what's going on, what you should be watching, maybe what you should be avoiding. Who knows? With me, as always, is Grace. How you doing, Grace?
I'm doing well, Taran. How are you doing?
Listen, I told you I'm scared.
Scared?
Watching all these scary things.
Yeah. It is spooky season. There. Yeah.
Mm.
They got into it on the weekend program as well. They did lots of spooky stuff over there. So everyone's getting into it. My neighbor put out the pumpkin.
As they should. So last week we talked about we're gonna, make October a bit of a horror themed month. We're gonna talk about some horror from this year, movies, TV shows. So we're gonna get into that today a little bit, give maybe a little preliminary list, as I am still fairly not dived in to the horror this year. So my goal is to dive in, but I can give you where I'm starting from so far. And then we'll also talk about some of the new shows that have been coming out this week so far that we have had a chance to watch. And also the Joker, Folie,
yeah.
Folie has had some controversy that you may need to know about if you are interested. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Should we start there, Grace?
I feel like it's one of the things that sort of like blew up on my social medias over the weekend as the sort of immediate reaction to Joker Folie was sort of starting to seep out into the world. I did go catch it. I saw it on Thursday night. So like technically like do you have this where it's like the movie theaters are like it comes out on Friday, but then you can, I think like it used to be a midnight release thing, and now they're just like, why don't we just make money on Thursday night too? And you can go watch new movies on like Thursday at like 9
p.m.
Yeah.
I think that's, to my memory, it was like Thursday at midnight, basically Friday morning at midnight. You could go and watch the new release, but then it just turned into it's releasing on Thursday night.
Yeah, even though it's, a lot of times you'll see the ads, it's like it's coming out on Friday, but then you can watch at the movie theater on the Thursday night. So that's what I did. I went to go watch later than I probably wanted to, but I did go. It's the only one that worked. So I went to go watch Joker Folie. And here's the thing, Taran, I kind of liked it. I thought it was interesting. I think it's definitely like there is a conversation it is having. It's probably more of an argument it's having with the first movie, but it is trying to say things. And there had been rumors that this was not a movie that seemingly was going to be well received. Critics, the early access to critics seemed to be maybe not great. But this is a movie where the first one made $1 billion, Taran, and Joaquin Phoenix won an Oscar for his performance. And so, like, I was kind of expecting, like, well, yeah, but a bunch of people are going to go see it. The general feeling is that, like, the feedback is that, like, this is basically an argument. It's kind of trying to self-correct on the first movie. This is Todd Phillips. He's trying to kind of correct on the people who seemed to adore and then sort of like love the Joker from the first movie.
Well, there's the whole meme of the Joker especially this one when it came out, was that it like all of the edgy kind of like I think South Park even had an episode on this,
right.
like, oh, I'm the Joker, like I'm misunderstood from society and I'm gonna cause mayhem. Like it had a big appeal to that kind of crowd for sure, and it became a meme.
It did. I think that's to a degree. There's a sense that that's a little bit overblown. I think because I don't think you can make $1 billion off the incel crowd. I think
truly that is not the only crowd it appealed to, for sure. I think very clearly it appealed to. I liked the movie. I wouldn't consider myself an edgy teen.
I mean, I do think it does have this thing where people are like, "Oh, this is just is it the King of New York or the Kings of New York?" It's basically just like that, but slapped on some superhero stuff. Like there were people who definitely were critiquing at the time, but it was inarguably a successful movie. And so this new one comes out. There's this piece of like, is it a musical? I do feel like that's also overblown. Like I don't feel like they were hiding that this is a musical. But the thing is, when you're watching it, it is a musical, but it's also not like, all right, and now here's the big number where people will break out in song. There's either these moments of like dream sequence or times where they're just singing to each other. And so that's the musical thing of this movie.
Like A Star Is Born.
Yeah, which Todd Phillips is a producer on this, A Star Is Born. So I think it's kind of more in line. There is still some like fanatical, like in terms of like, it's clearly a dream sequence. Like it's clearly this is imaginative. As somebody who's like not always rushing out to go see me, I like a musical, but I'm not in love with musicals. I would say this was not the worst thing to me. Of like I felt like it felt grounded in a way that I thought was good. I think the problem is that like I think that it's definitely telling the people who watch the like sort of like people that Todd Phillips does not love that they loved the first movie or maybe misunderstood his movie. He's definitely having a conversation with them about like I'm trying to fix what I tell you, but maybe not fix. Maybe he's just like, you really didn't get it and you're all fools. A little bit.
Is this something that he's saying, or is this an interpreted message based on the fact that this is that he followed up the Joker to a sequel that was a musical?
No, I mean it's in there in terms of the like who is Arthur Fleck, who is the Joker. Like it's in the text of the film that you are supposed to feel like maybe the lessons learned from the first. He's being more explicit. I think this is a common thing. Is it Frank Herbert really felt like people misunderstood Paul Atreides in the original Dune book he wrote, and so Dune Messiah is basically in response to the first Dune movie being like, or the first Dune book, sorry, being like, no, he's he's not. You're supposed to feel a way about him that you didn't all. He's not like a cool bro hero, Anyway.
Yeah, and I mean it's the same conversation, similar conversation to what we talked about with The Boys, where it's like, hey, don't, this is satire, but like, don't be rooting for this guy, like,
right. It's interesting to examine him, and I feel like because like there's not this like world of difference between. I mean, we really don't know like the Joker from The Dark Knight, his backstory, but there are people who idolize that guy too. I do just feel that like the difference is like in the movie you also had Batman being like, this guy's core philosophy and belief is wrong, and eventually we will defeat him. Right. So
he's not the main character. Yeah.
He's not the main character.
It's not meant to. It's not meant to represent his worldview as a message of the film.
Right. And so yeah, this movie I do feel like it is trying to do that. And then I think people who like didn't jive with the first one or even like the first one feel like this is a step down. It's not trying to do it's doing something pretty different. And so there's a lot of talk about like Lady Gaga being underserved in this movie too, which I think I disagree with, but also I don't think it's a complete unfair assessment. So this movie is just not doing well critically. It did win the box office. It made about $40 million. Yeah, maybe it probably should, coming a sequel to $1 billion movie, you would think would do better than this. So I think it's very
You would think. Yeah,
I think it's
would should be on track for much better than that, I would imagine. Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, like I feel very divorced from all the cultural conversation around it. It's not something that I like heavily followed either the first time or the second time. When I heard that this was going to be a musical, I was like, oh, that's a big swing. Like that's a big swing. Yes. Artistically, it could be great, but it more likely will not be great. It's like, it's a very ambitious idea to try to accomplish this. And most of what I feel like I've heard so far is a lot of, culture war stuff about the Joker, right? Like, and where it falls in this second version or the sequel of it. But I've also just kind of feel like I've seen like, I don't know if it landed that ambitious swing, regardless of all of that. But it sounds like you might disagree, that you actually did kind of like it.
I mean, I kind of like it. I mean, it's like a courtroom musical drama okay, here's the other thing. I think that there's a lot. This is actually a very similar thing to what we've actually been saying about Rings of Power, which I feel like, I don't know if it's my Twitter algorithm feed or what, but all I'm getting the last few days is like how amazing Lord of the Rings of Power was. Like that's all I'm being serviced. Is like they don't seem to be like from big. They're like, it'll just like the feed thinks I need to see this thing about like it. I'm seeing a lot of things where it's like, here's the thread why this thing that happened in the show makes a lot of sense, and then people go and it's like a whole thread. I'm seeing a lot of that. The thing that we complimented Rings of Power on a lot is how it looked and these big moments. I actually think Joker Folie Deux is very similar. It is so well crafted in terms of like how it looks. And for me, the musical stuff worked, but like it's a lot of the same stuff. But I feel like the first Joker had this of like that staircase scene is so iconic, like that kind of instantly became embedded in our culture. I don't know that the same thing will happen, but it just does look and it feels gritty and dark, and then there's moments where it's fantasy and dreams, and it's these like movie studio sets that look quite incredible, and the costuming is great. I think the performances are really great. I don't know, I'm kind of like, it's one of those things where like when I finished watching, it's also the expectations. I'd heard it was bad, then I watch it, didn't think it was that bad, but then also the more I walk away from it, I'm like, oh yeah, you can pull on that thread and it starts to fall apart. You pull on that, starts to fall apart. But for a like 2-hour movie going experience, I did not hate my time, which maybe is not a ringing endorsement, but it feels like more appreciative than what I think a lot of people are feeling about Joker Folie Deux. So
would you say that you're feeling on the Joker Folie? Is it Folie?
Folie, it's French. I don't even know what it stands. This is bad
Folie,
Canadian of me.
Folie Deux? I don't
Folie
know. Joker sequel. Would you say that you liked it given the like in comparison to the response, or that you just full on you really liked the movie, you'd recommend it?
I mean, it's a tough one to feel like I can I don't know that people need to. I mean, other than that, the spectacle. So I was gonna say whether people should rush out to see it. Other than that, I do think it looks beautiful, and if you watch it on a big movie screen, it's gonna look amazing. I think
might say that you can't fully recommend it.
I can't fully. That's right. I mean, I feel so out of step that like everybody I like on my Letterboxd gave it at most 2.5 stars. Basically, there's a couple people have a little higher than that, but like 2.5 stars is kind of like a good review for this movie. So I feel like I'm maybe I feel like I'm out of sync, but like I gave it 4 stars. I don't know, 4 to 5 stars.
Oh wow, 4 stars is pretty good.
I thought it was a good movie that has interesting ideas. There is also a thing that, and I don't mean to say this like people should rush out to see it, but you definitely have the chance of being spoiled on a thing that happens at the very end of the movie that could also impact the way you see the movie. And if you don't want to get spoiled, you should go probably watch. There's a thing that happens. He makes a bold choice at the end of the movie. Just Todd Phillips. So I don't know. Do with that what you will, I think.
All right. Well, I, of course, have not seen this movie. Not sure I will in the near future. So we may not circle back around to this, at least in the near future. But interesting stuff, with this. Again, to me, it feels like this is mostly just a little bit of a swing and a miss from Todd Phillips trying to make something happen here. I mean, inevitably, I think that trying to make something like this work, it needed to be perfect in order to not piss everyone off. And yeah, it sounds like it probably wasn't.
Yeah, I don't think it's the train wreck that everyone says it is. I also don't think that it's I didn't give it 5 stars. I don't think it's perfect. That's not what I'm saying. I think it's like a fine to good film, which when you come off a film that made $1 billion, you probably have to have a better movie than that. So, but it is
I
interesting
appreciate
that, like,
the attempt.
I agree, and I think a big swing of like, yeah, the second one's going to be a musical, and I think like to a degree, like responding to the people who misunderstood the thing and kind of like making a statement is not a thing. I don't know that you need to make like a $200 million movie to do that, but he did.
I mean,
that's what
I'll say it, like, from my perspective, I'd rather have a sequel like this that's a total flop commercially and critically than just The Joker 2. Like, do we need The Joker 2? You know what I mean? Like a sequel to the movie that we already watched that is The Joker, that's already like one of the most well-established characters out there. I don't know. For me personally, I'm not like the biggest like bathead, I guess. Like, I don't need more movies in that genre, but like I'm happy that they took a swing, even if it failed. I think it's fun.
Well, I guess a way, which the thing you just said, I'm going to reinforce the point, but I don't think there's a lot more you can say about Joker without including the Batman, which this movie can't do. It can't have Batman in it for a million reasons why. And this was, I think Josh said to this. I don't think he said this on a pod, but he feels kind of the same way about the Penguin of like, is it worth it to explore all this time where some of the most interesting conversation you can have about the thing is the Penguin's relationship to the Batman, and you can't have Batman in your movie or TV show. So I don't know. Like, yeah, I agree. A continuation of that first movie isn't maybe necessary. I think there's an argument that like even like the response of like you didn't understand the first one, I'm going to make a second movie to make you sure you understand the point, doesn't really make sense to me either. And so therefore it's like, if we're going to make a movie that we can't have Batman in it, I don't know why we're doing this.
All right. Well, let's talk about some of the other shows that we've been watching. I know that there are a couple ones that we flagged last week that were coming up. I have not had a chance to watch much other than horror this week, but I did, and I'm pretty sure you did as well. I did manage to check out at least the first episode or so of Heartstopper season 3.
Yeah, not horror at all, but yes, I did watch Heartstopper.
No, that was the one. Listen, I got confused. I was like, I can only watch horror this week because I really need to start kicking that off. And I was like, Heartstopper, that's going to be a good one. Oh, wait a minute, it's this show.
Actually, the gay teen rom-com. Yeah. There's actually an event in Toronto tomorrow that I think is sold out that I'm going to keep looking to see if I can get tickets for, but Alice Oseman will be doing a Q&A after the first 2 episodes of Heartstopper are going to air at the TIFF Theater. So I'm kind of like excited. That's about as much as I've watched, but I would rewatch them to then do the Q&A with Alice Oseman. I've liked it so far. I think it's good. The only thing that I struggle with is the fact that they are keeping the timeline contained. And when you look, it doesn't so much matter in the moment, but when you look at pictures of Nick from season 1 to now, he is so much more jacked and he looks older. And so they're very much being like, they're like, all of this happens within like a year. And it's like, it's so tough because but I mean, I don't know what else to do. I don't want them to recast the characters. I want them to like extend the timeline of the show probably, but they don't want to do that.
Yeah. So. I don't have a ton to say about the show, I think, beyond what we've already said. Other than, I guess, for season 3, it's definitely more of what you'd come to expect. Exactly what we talked about before. Trying to tackle big serious issues, but not in a way that's meant to like super gut punch you. It can like straddle the line sometimes, but it always tends to like come back around and not be a show that like is really gonna hurt to watch most of the time. So that's what I appreciate about it. I think the characters are very likable, and it's just generally a good time. I just glancing at like since this is a Netflix show, all the episodes have dropped, even though we've only watched the first couple. It does look to me like on a cursory glance that the next couple of episodes are rated higher than the first couple. So it seems like we might be getting even better into season 3. So if you like Heartstopper, or if this sounds interesting to you, definitely check out the show. And season 3 seems to not be a disappointment.
I highly encourage. If you have not watched Heartstopper, I think it's well worth watching, especially season 1, season 2. Season 1 has Olivia Colman in it, which is a delight for me. I went to search who plays Nick's aunt in this season because I was like, you look so familiar, and it's Haley Atwell, who's Agent Carter and it's been in Mission Impossible, pretty famous. I was like, oh yeah, that's who that is. And I was on the Reddit trying to like just find that thing, and I saw a lot of posts, Taran, that I thought were very relatable to me, which is there a level to which the show is not sad. And I've talked when I did podcasts about the show before, I had this feeling that the show, I do feel like this is more in line with how it is to be queer in high school. Now, I think we've progressed to a point where like there are more people who are out. It's not that you will not receive homophobia, but there's very much this idealized version of the world and how it could be if we let people be who they are, which I very much love. But there's also a way in which I saw a lot of posts from people who are probably my age or older, who were like, sometimes it's hard to watch because it's so perfect, in the sense that
makes sense. Yeah.
This is not, there is almost regret about, wow, if like high school had have been like that for me, I would have been much happier, and that's, easy to say. I obviously want it to be easier for kids now, but there's a level to which, like, if I had come out when I was if I was trans in high school, like maybe I would have went to prom in a way that like or all of these things, the way you would have experienced it. And so there's actually a lot of people who feel
Mhm.
like that's the hard part of watching the show, is feeling like it's like, oh man, if only life had been like that when I was there, which I thought was a very interesting sentiment for people to have about the show. I do think generally the show, it's not trying to cater to, I think it is for a younger audience. Like the graphic novels, I bought them and was like, oh, these are clearly not written for for me. They are for at most a teen.
Mhm.
And so I like have not really read a lot of them. The other thing the show is doing apparently very well, so it's being very faithful to the graphic novels. So it was just an interesting thing I saw in relation to the new season of Heartstopper come out, of people being like, anybody else have a hard time watching this show, because it's generally like the sweetest show on television.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Did you check out Nobody Wants This?
I did. I watched the first episode. I didn't know it was more rom-commy, I think, than I thought it was. I mean, I think that it gives us that tone quite quickly. I did like it. There's a lot of people I like in the show. That's probably my
Mhm.
reason to keep going back to it. But I don't have much to say, I think, about the show so far, other than that I think it's very funny that the main character is a podcaster who's like, yeah, anyway.
Yeah, I did not get a chance to check it out yet, but we'll keep it on the radar for now. And I think it's probably worth giving a shot if you're into rom-coms and it's got good actors and it seems to be well received. So I'm sure that's going to be a good one to keep track of. All right, anything else that you've managed to check out over the last week?
I would just say, in terms of like Nobody Wants It, it does feel like, I think if you do enjoy the type of things that Netflix puts out in like, I do think like I've not watched some of these shows, but like I feel like it has like, it's more like Emily in Paris. It's more like there's some Bridgerton in it. Like it is like a modern rom-com, so it's not exactly that, but it definitely has that. Like, I actually think they do they do quite a good job, I think, Netflix, at like having some of this style of show, this content that feels in line with. I have not really, other than the shows I was keeping up with. We obviously watched the finale of Rings of Power, which I still see is on the verge of being renewed. Taran, is what I've seen. And The Penguin. Those are kind of the shows I've been watching. There's a couple movies I'm really interested to check out that I didn't get a chance to see yet, that I will. Is A Different Man, is a Sebastian Stan movie. There's The Outrun, which is Saoirse Ronan movie. Gonna try to check those out, but no, that's about my extent of what I've watched on television this past week.
Yes. Well, as I said, I've really been focusing on trying to catch up with some horror, because I went and looked at what I've seen this year, and it's a bit lacking. If I was to start to put together a list, there's really not much there. Prior to this week, I had seen Alien, Romulus, Oddity, and Abigail, and that was basically it for horror.
I saw the TV Glove. Did you see I Saw the TV Glove? You saw that,
I
right?
had not seen that. I actually started to watch that. Got interrupted, but I will go back. So I have added to this collection. I went and saw The Substance in theaters.
Okay.
It was definitely an experience in theaters.
Yes. How busy was your theater? Can I ask?
Wasn't too busy, but I sat in the back row, which I thought was a good choice.
Interesting question. Is that what you typically do? Where are you for seat preference at the movie theater, Taran?
I will. I mean, if I had my absolute preference, it would be like middle, right? Generally middle of the middle. But that might change depending on how crowded the seats selected are. Like if I can go back a couple of rows and not be next to anybody, I might choose that rather than try to squeeze myself in somewhere. So, but I'm not usually too opposed to the back. It also depends on the theater itself. Sometimes if it's a really small theater, you don't want to be in the back. Sometimes you do want to be in the back in a small theater because it's not that bad. Yeah.
I'm kind of similar.
Just never in the front.
Well, yeah, I'm the same. I would say that I in a perfect world where I'm basically the only person in the theater, I want to sit middle. But because that's not what happens, I've actually become much more of a like back upper aisle seat person. That has kind of been my go-to, of like sit right on the last. I don't sit in the middle. I sit on the aisle seat. Back row sometimes.
You go like side of the theater.
I go not the like. I go in the. Okay, this is gonna sound weird,
Middle
but
middle aisle.
I go middle aisle. Yeah, I'm like
Okay.
the aisle seat, but in the middle where the majority of the seats are. I'm not the like 2 seats that are off to the side person.
I heavily prioritize middle of the theater,
Interesting.
regardless of like depth.
And the only thing I sometimes do, I need to be better about knowing which theaters. I go to enough movies and I go to enough of the same theaters a lot that I should know whether the back row of a particular theater is going to be one that doesn't recline. And not that I don't actually love reclining too much, but I don't like when you're like just back against the wall. Like I want a little bit of the lean. So sometimes I'm worried that a back row seat, I'm going to get kind of stuck. And then I'm also too much of a rule follower that they're very rarely do I buy a movie ticket where like they're not so many seats that I could go sit in instead, but I'm kind of like, no, I can't. What if somebody comes and I'm sitting in their seat that that we already are pre-assigned? So I'm too much of a rule follower to even switch. So yeah.
Yes. Well, I did see The Substance.
Yes.
I liked it. I thought it was really, really good. I think that there was a lot in there that I really enjoyed. Probably my biggest critique of it is that I felt like it was maybe a little bit too long. I felt like, you know, maybe a little bit shorter could have helped. Not that there's any like one specific thing I would cut out. But I felt like by the time the ending was reached, I felt like I had gotten the point like a while ago.
So I'm totally with you. It's been my thing too, but my initial reaction to that is that like what you probably can do is there are lots of scenes where you're seeing a gross thing for a long time. Like and I think and then I'm also like that's entirely the point, right? The point is to prolong how much you see a gross thing. The point is excess. The point is like too much. Like that's the point of the movie. And so every time I'm like it needs to be shorter, I'm with you. There's not a scene I would cut. Some people are like conflicted on the ending. If the ending is like
I'm into the ending.
I'm into the ending too, so I wouldn't cut that. And then like you could probably like try to like cut some of these scenes that are like just you're looking at a thing that's gross for a while. You could cut all those to be shorter, but the whole point is like excess. So when I feel like making it shorter is like antithetical to what and that's me having an appreciation for what I think the filmmaker was trying to do, which is like they want you to see it. You're going to see a lot of it. It's going to be long. Like I thought it was mesmerizing in that way.
It was definitely what I appreciated about it was that I don't think it's particularly spoilery to say it's like a body horror movie, and I mean it's basically a genre, and I think it does some things that are not exactly like breaking new ground, but it feels fresh. What I really appreciate about the movie was its cinematography and the way that it moved its camera, the shots that they chose. It felt very motivated, felt very deliberate. And I really appreciate that when I'm watching a movie. It doesn't feel like they're just going by the numbers, just like what is necessary. It feels like they're really approaching each shot intentionally to contribute to the overall aesthetic and vibe of the movie. And so I really, especially for a horror movie, I think aesthetics and vibes are so important. And so really enjoyed The Substance for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree that I don't know like whether or not it's saying something new. I feel like this is a conversation that has been had for a long time. And I'll say this in terms of like my caveat with like for horror movie wise, I have not seen something like that. I'm sure there are people who watch more horror than me are like, oh, this movie over here did that. And I'm like, yeah, I feel like mainstream wise, it's not a movie that I've seen done like this very often. I think it's really smart. And I actually think like one of the best scenes in the movie is not a horror scene. I won't spoil, but it's like Demi Moore staring at the camera. It's my favorite scene. Or staring at the mirror is my favorite scene of the movie.
Instantly know what you're talking about.
And I think it's well done that that type of thing in a movie that has so many visualizations that I could be like, Taran, this thing from the movie, and you know what I'm talking about. But for a scene that's it's not horror other than it's like emotional. It's very
Mhm.
emotional and dramatic scene. And Demi Moore is like so beautiful. So I think that that like also adds to the themes of the movies
Mhm.
into the movie in terms of what it's trying to tell you and how it affects these people. I thought it was incredibly well done. My biggest regret is I saw it in a pretty busy theater, but I missed the opportunity to see it at the film festival with a packed theater,
Mm.
which I thought would have been a lot of fun. I think this is a movie that is enhanced by seeing it either with a lot of people, or this is the type of movie that like I would say like see if you can like watch it with some of your friends and watch it together. Of like if you're gonna wait till it comes and streaming on home at home, this is a movie I think that is benefited by watching it with other people, and whether that's like going to the and having sort of a full theater or watching it with people who are because you're like don't watch it alone. I think it's enhanced by like the experience of you all have to watch this thing that's on the screen.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I also and these were movies I just kind of was able to throw on in the background, and then hopefully they would grab me. Neither of them particularly did, but I watched Salem's Lot, the new Stephen King adaptation. I like Stephen King generally. He calls out critics that criticize him for his endings, but I'm not the biggest fan of his endings.
Uh-huh.
But I've liked a lot of the adaptations of his work. I saw that this was not exactly the most well-rated movie, but I was like, let me just throw it on. And I can kind of confirm that it was pretty meh for me. Just honestly a very average at best movie. I gave it like a 5 out of 10. Didn't really do anything particularly interesting for me. I wouldn't say it's worth checking out. And then I also watched Lisa Frankenstein, which is I guess technically a take on Frankenstein kind of movie. Very like 80s vibes. It's got Catherine Newton and Cole Sprouse. Cole Sprouse from what is it? The Riverdale, I
Yeah,
think
yeah, yeah.
he's
And also
very famous from.
Zach and Cody.
Well,
They're
that's
the
his origin,
that's
right?
the
That he's from.
OG version, yeah, of
Yes.
them. But
And Catherine Newton, I believe I recognized her from Ant-Man. She looked super familiar to me. And
she
I
is an
think,
Ant-Man. She's also in Three Billboards, and she's been in Blockers, Freaky. If you watch the like,
oh, Three Billboards, yeah, and Lady Bird and Tiny Map of Perfect, or Map of Tiny Perfect Things might actually be where I really recognize her. Either way, she's great in this. Cole Sprouse doesn't have like a ton to do, but um,
no,
uh,
he's actually mostly a Frankenstein monster the whole time.
yeah. But oh, and this is a Diablo Cody movie. I didn't
Yeah,
even
exactly what I was
realize
going
that
to
when I
mention. That,
watched it.
yeah, original writer of
Um,
writer of Juno, but then Jennifer's Body, and it's set in the
yes, you know
same
what? That
universe.
really tracks, actually.
Yeah, it's the same universe as Jennifer's Body too.
It is same universe because it felt like it could be a Jennifer's Body. Okay, so yeah, that very much makes a lot of sense. And I, having seen Jennifer's Body, I think honestly pretty same vein. If you like Jennifer's Body, you'll probably like this one. It's pretty fun. It's pretty campy. And it's again, it's not like doing anything like super fresh. It's not like gonna really blow your socks off probably, but I thought it was a good time. Thought it was fun enough.
Yeah, I saw this kind of. I remember when it came out. It came out in February, I think, of this year, and having a moment of like I was looking
Yep.
for something to go to, and I saw this and was like, let me give that a shot. And yeah, I quite liked it. I thought it definitely gives off that like 80s movie vibe thing that I think works really well for it. It's very fun. I liked Lisa Frankenstein a lot. I would recommend it. I've not watched Salem's Lot yet, Taran.
Mm-hmm.
And I was recently having a discussion with some folks. I was at a book launch party, and I was saying I was a little bit embarrassed, and not embarrassed, but I was being honest and saying that like I'm actually kind of like a new reader again, if that makes sense. So it's like a couple
Mm-hmm.
years ago, I decided I wanted to try to read every day. So I try to set aside about 30 minutes every day to just read. And what that means is I have a big period of time that I was not reading, and so I have a lot of gaps in my reading list of things that I have read. But I really wanted to this fall read a Stephen King novel, which I've never read. I've not read a single one of his books. There was a little bit of discussion of like, what should I read first? I've bought Salem's Lot. That's the one of the like I saw a post that was like, if you're looking to get Stephen King, we'd recommend Salem's Lot. So I bought that. I've not started reading it yet, but I actually throw this to you, Taran, of like, what do you think is a good Stephen King book to start with?
I mean, the thing is that like at this point, Stephen King's what do you call a bookography?
A bibliography, is it not?
Bibliography? I guess so. It doesn't seem right to me, but his body of work, at the very least, is so varied. Obviously, like I think when you think of Stephen King, you think of like, you know, maybe Carrie, or like, you know, you think of these like old school horror movies or stories, many of them set in Maine, like It, of course, you'll think of It, and stuff like that. But you also have stuff like The Green Mile, and Shawshank Redemption, and in a more recently, oh god, the year, I think it was 1962.
Oh yeah.
No, it was, sorry, it was 11/22/63,
right,
which was a time travel story. So like, you know, it really depends on what you're looking for with Stephen King. He's got so much out there. He's even like The Dark Tower and stuff like that. So what I will tell you is my and I haven't read this in a while. It'd actually be interesting to go back and reread this now that I'm much older. But my favorite Stephen King book has always been, for a very long time, a book that was not even technically written by Stephen King. It's written by Richard Bachman, his pen name.
right.
The Long Walk, which is a story about this. It has a very kind of like young adult premise, I would say, where it's basically like these, to my memory, teens are forced to go on a long walk, and until basically you either like pass out and die or something, or you are the last one standing or something like that. Or yeah, I think if you slow down enough, you just like get shot. And then like I think the winner like gets a prize of some sort. It's been a long time since I've read it. But I really enjoyed that book. So that's my go-to Stephen King recommendation most of the time.
I am looking for horror, so that is good. That's a good recommendation. I do have Salem's Lot here, so if the audience wants to let me know what they think I should be watching, here's really interesting. I was just looking up The Long Walk. It is being adapted into an upcoming film. It's being written by J.T. Molnar, who just came out with Strange Darling, which I thought is a great horror movie. That once again, I remind people, do not go and look about what it is, because the best experience you'll have watching the movie is knowing nothing about the movie. So, but written by J.T. Molnar, who kind of just had a little bit of a breakout by with writing and directing Strange Darling, and then is tapped to write The Long Walk. And then it looks like it's a director who mostly was doing videography, I think, and he was doing, or maybe it's just that he's going to. Oh no, he directed I Am Legend, and he worked on 4 of the 5 Hunger Games. So
he directed I Am Legend.
Not J.T. Molnar. Francis Lawrence is going to be the director for The Long Walk.
Okay.
But it's being written by J.T. Molnar, who just wrote Strange Darling.
Francis Lawrence, who I think also did like the Hunger Games stuff.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. That's it. I think I'd heard. I think I've heard that they're going to make. I think that this is one of those things that like it's been in the works for a long time that they are going to make it, but it looks like this is actually pretty far along in the process.
It's always it's funny. There's been when you're listing off like the Stephen King thing, like there's almost everything you mentioned has a film or television show you could go watch.
I mean, that was the big thing, right? Like he used to. I don't know if he still does this, but he would just like sell rights to his movies for super cheap. I think like he would sell them to students for like $1, and stuff like that. So he's very, very open to having things worked on. Obviously, The Shining, a huge like there's so much Stephen King to even grasp.
I know.
It's tough to find a starting place.
And that feels intimidating to trying to find a starting place. But I feel like Salem's Lot, though, it's one of his. I am kind of a fan of like going earlier in the bibliography than later, and so it's his second novel. Although you could argue just go with Carrie because it's the first one. But
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense too. I think I'm probably not the biggest fan of some of the more recent Stephen King
Mm.
novels. I did like 11/22/63,
Uh-huh.
but I didn't love the ending. And then there was another there's one about like a hitman that I really didn't care for
Okay.
recently. Um, but yeah, he's all over the place at times.
That's okay. Wrote a lot of books.
That he very much did. The other thing I watched, and I told Grace I was going to check this out last week. There's a show on Amazon Prime that I watched a few years ago called Them, which was about a like black family who moved into a very like white neighborhood in California, in Compton actually. At the time, it was a very white neighborhood when they moved in. That was the whole thing, and it's a horror show, not just the horror of what that sounds like,
Mhm.
but also like some supernatural stuff. And I really enjoyed season one. I thought like it started a little bit like, oh, this is interesting. Then it got really good, and then I thought it landed well enough. The second season of them dropped somewhat recently. I believe it was in April. And I've been meaning to check it out. And so, of course, when I was like, oh, we got to watch some horror stuff this month, let me make sure I check out Them season two. So I've managed to watch the first 2 episodes of season 2 of Them, and I loved them. I'm
Mm.
actually really enjoying this season. It's so what happens is this is an anthology show. So the second season is not following the story from the first. I don't think you need to have watched the first season to watch the second season. But the second season is so far about a homicide detective who is working a case that she believes to be like a serial killer case. But it's targeting like black families essentially. And so there's some pushback on the investigation, so on and so forth. And so it's very scary. Like it
Mm.
really leans pretty
Okay.
heavily into the horror part, which is very fun. There are some interesting characters, and like it just kind of nails it. I think it's really like I definitely recommend this so far based on these first 2 episodes. Definitely worth checking out. Sometimes I find that like shows like this will start really strong and then really slow down. You know, it's like 8 episodes long, and can you really sustain a premise for that long? So we'll see. But right now, it's definitely one of my top contenders for the year. Certainly in terms of TV shows, it's really the only horror TV show I've managed to really watch. But it surprised me with how much I liked the second season.
Yeah, that's exciting because we talked earlier about whether or not our sort of list will should we keep it to movies or television? I think it should absolutely include television. I think if we're gonna, you know, put together the best things we saw, if a television show was stronger, then I think that's, you know, as you said, you do 8 episodes of a horror show, like that could be harder to sustain. So if it is worthy of being on the list, then absolutely it should be there. So I know people are checking out From season 3. You could say Agatha All Along is horror-ish, whether or not, you know, would make our list, like would depend
I'll
on whether
check it
you're
out. I'll give my judgment on whether we count that as horror.
okay. I'll do the same as well. So yeah, there certainly could be some horror shows that make it in there. A couple years ago, there was like Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities, which is like every
I did
episode
check
was
that out. Yeah.
anthology, which like there's been good horror television shows that have come across our path. But yeah, Them is a great recommendation. I had not heard of it before you recommended it, so I'm excited to check it out.
I'm surprised it got a second season because I really haven't heard many people talk about it. But I'm happy it did because it's you know I really did enjoy. It was basically like when I moved to San Diego, it was like the first show I watched.
Mm,
In San
okay.
Diego, so and it was about like you know, a family moving into California, so it was like, oh, this
Yeah. So far,
um
is there a way in which you would say like, could someone just be watching season 2 because it's anthology, or is there a reason even so far that you've seen like people should watch season 1 before.
No, I mean, like I said, I think you can jump straight into season 2. So far, I've seen zero, connection in terms of like you need to have seen season 1. As far as I'm aware, and it's been a couple of years, I've not seen any connection at all so far. I think can certainly jump straight into season 2.
Okay, fun.
Not that I wouldn't recommend season 1 also, but yeah, so far I'm enjoying season 2 more than I remember enjoying season 1 even. So that's those are the horror things I checked out. And so what I've done is I've put together a temporary list of all of the horror things I've watched so far. As I continue to watch more, I'm going to add to this list. It's going to change. It's going to shape. By the end of the month, we're going to have my list, Grace's list, and everyone that we consult and get this like final recommendation
curated list.
Yes. Yeah. But currently I will tell you, I think Alien is still probably at the top of my horror list. It really like ticked the, I mean, Alien, the first one, is one of my favorite horror movies. I think Alien Romulus really nailed that vibe for me. I really enjoyed watching it in a theater. So I think that's my number 1 right now. Like that is the one to beat, with The Substance probably coming in second right now, because it was very, very enjoyable in its own unique way. I think it definitely deserves the praise I feel like it's getting. I put Them, season 2, number 3 on the list, because I've only seen 2 episodes so far. It definitely has potential to go even higher, but I think it's definitely up there right now. Then I have Oddity and Abigail. I don't expect either of them to make the final list, but they're currently kind of placeholdering my top 5. I have not had a chance to check out From season 3 yet. I'm not sure it would make a list for me, even though I do enjoy the show, but we'll see.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I have a movie that's number 1 on my list that I'm looking at my list. I'm like, I don't know if it's the top one even. And I have Alien Romulus pretty highly up, but I'm like, I think it's maybe a better movie, but not a better horror movie. I don't know if that makes sense at all, Taran.
That could be true.
Yeah. One that I found on my list that I really liked, it's pretty low down whether or not it would make it. If there's a way for people to watch Exhuma, this is have I talked about this on the podcast before? I don't know that I have. Basically, it's a Korean film, I believe. Let me just make sure that's right. Looks like you could watch it on AMC Plus at the moment, or you could rent it on YouTube. So it should be available.
You had me at Korean film, I'm not gonna lie.
It's basically a group of people who go and exhume graves because the families believe that something happened, either the way that they buried them or something has happened in the meantime, that the bodies need to be exhumed and then like fixed. Like you need to do some ceremony stuff to fix it. And it gets it just follows that group of people. You can assume that stuff happens to them. I really liked it. I think it's because it was Korean. I had a little bit of a limited release. I haven't seen many people talk about it. And again, I don't think it's the greatest film ever, but I really liked it when I saw it. It's like a very fun way to spend, a couple hours. So Exhuma is one I don't think I've name dropped yet.
I believe my favorite horror movie of all time is a Korean film,
okay.
Tale of Two Sisters.
Okay, fun.
They listen, good track record.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? Let the Right One In is up there too.
Oh yeah.
But that one is what, Swedish? I think it's Swedish.
Yeah, it is Swedish. Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently, thing with Speak No Evil, which I watched recently. The thing is, people say they switched the ending from 2 different films, and it's originally a Danish or Swedish film, and they're like, Swedes, they did it better. We'll see.
All right. Anything else, Grace?
No, that's pretty much it. There's some stuff coming down the pipe that I'm excited for, but as of right now, that's what I've watched, and that's what I think about it.
Okay, let's just do a cursory glance here. What to be looking out for this week? Because I don't. Oh, of course. We forgot to mention the what is it called? The new HBO show?
The franchise. I haven't watched much of it. I think it's getting a little bit of mixed reviews. I do think it's going to lean more towards something I do like. But Yeah, I think some people saw it, and tough to gauge after one episode. But I think people generally were feeling like didn't really hook me so far.
Yeah, it seems like
But
it's kind of going the way of what is it, Avenue
oh
5,
yes, yes,
rather than like In the Thick of It or Veep.
right,
Unfortunately, so far, based on
yeah.
response, I have not had a chance to watch yet myself.
Movies wise, there are some movies that are coming up soon, which I believe let me see what I had here. There's a movie coming out this week that I was very excited about that I wanted to chat about. Oh, Saturday Night comes out this week, the SNL movie. SNL, I don't know if you've been watching SNL. Nate Bargatze, I really like. He hosted this past weekend. There's some stuff on, I don't know, I was kind of intrigued. I watched this last week's episode at my brother's house and was like, oh, more entertaining than I thought. And they're doing a lot of stuff with SNL 50. The Lonely Island did a digital short this week for the first time in how many years. Andy Samberg's back on the show playing Kamala Harris's husband. So you could see that they do more content this season. So they're trying some stuff. There's also, have you heard of Piece by Piece, Taran? This is the Pharrell Williams biography, like, you know, fictional, but like a whatever, but it's Lego. It's all Lego.
Yeah. No, I haven't heard this.
Yeah. Piece by Piece, a vibrant journey of the life of Pharrell Williams told through the lens of Lego animation. At least they're trying things, I guess.
Okay. Looks like there's a couple other things coming down the line as well. Looks like a horror show called Teacup coming to Peacock this week.
Okay.
Might be worth giving a slight shot to. And then Alfonso Cuarón. Cool.
Oh yeah, the disclaimer. Alfonso Cuarón.
Disclaimer.
Yeah.
Yes, coming soon to Apple TV.
That's Kate
so
Blanchett.
that'll be interesting. Yes, Kate Blanchett. Yeah,
in a TV show.
In a TV show, and then that's most of what's standing out to me so far. Looks like a show on Paramount called Curfew. There's a show, I think I checked this one out. Yeah, called Accused. That's having a season 2. I thought it was fine.
Oh, that filmed near me.
Oh, did
they
it?
were just filming. Yeah, they were just finishing filming some stuff near me. Every day I walked by. Yeah. When we see an episode that's filmed at a beaches dance studio, you'll know that's where I live. I live right behind it, basically. I believe Shrinking comes back in a couple weeks, and also What We Do in the Shadows has its season premiere coming up, I believe. So there's definitely some stuff that I am looking forward to.
Yeah, Abbott Elementary also starting its 4th season this week.
Right. Crossover episode, It's Always Sunny coming up.
I heard about that. That's interesting to me.
Yeah, very fun.
All right. Of course, we forgot to mention it last time. The Last of Us season 2 dropped a little teaser. I'm not usually a teaser guy, but because I've played the game, I was like, "What? It's not like it's gonna spoil me." And it was so cool to watch. Like, I was actually super hyped by it. Definitely super interested and intrigued by what they do with season 2. We covered, we did some coverage of The Last of Us season 1.
Yep.
So definitely check out that coverage if you haven't. We talk a lot about season 2 and what might it be there, but definitely one to watch out for once it does come out. I believe it said 2025. So
yeah.
Yeah.
If you check out the podcast we do, basically, like Taran and I were doing sort of a video game sort of podcast where we would talk about what had happened in the video game compared to what we'd seen on the TV show up to a point, and then we would then get into a spoiler section where we talk about what could be coming based on the first and second video game. So
I was really proud of that podcast. I feel like we did a lot of fun analysis on that Last of Us podcast. So I'm very excited to watch Last of Us season 2 as well. All right. I believe that is what we have for you then this week. Stay tuned. Next week we'll have some more horror to talk about. We'll have some more other shows and movies to talk about, I'm sure. And in the meantime, there's still some other shows going on for coverage. Grace,
Yeah, well, mostly the Penguin coverage. Mike and I have been chatting about the Penguin, and I think that's kind of it right now. We wrapped up our industry coverage, and you and I wrapped up Rings of Power coverage. So going on, there's obviously more content on the feed. TV for Real with Mike and Sasha, the weekend program with Josh and Antonio, and I did special coverage on Will and Harper, the Netflix documentary with Dr. Evie Jagoda, and chatted with Chappelle for a bit about that. So yeah, that's what I got going on.
All right. Well, that's it then. Thank you all so much for joining us here today. And we will see all of you next time.